Hello everyone and welcome back to Local Liberty. This is Brian and Shane. We are back on April 24th, 2016, 2 days ahead of the Democratic and Republican Party presidential primary. And I think there's a few other elections happening that day as well, but we're going to talk about the presidential primary. Now, this cycle is somewhat exceptional in the sense that our primaries actually matter this time around. Typically by April, the chosen horse has been chosen for.
They're a chosen donkey or elephant.
There you go. Exactly. I got the wrong animal. Thank you, Shane. So basically, this primary election cycle in Connecticut actually matters for once. You know, 2012, Romney, and it wasn't even one on the Democratic side, but the nominees are almost always wrapped up by the time it gets to us. So because of that, this is generating quite a bit more buzz this go around in Connecticut and the other states that happen to have their primaries on the same day as us. So that's come up in 2 days. I just want to share a few quick thoughts on what we can learn from this election cycle so far. The biggest lesson learned, I think, is this hopefully is going to teach us really what democracy means in this country. And I have a quote that I'd like to start with, and this is from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee. And this is what the DNC chair had to say on superdelegates. I think this was right around the time of the New Hampshire primary, where Miss Clinton and Bernie Sanders both came out of it with the same amount of delegates, despite Sanders winning by a significant margin. Here's the quote. Unpledged delegates exist really to make sure that the party leaders and elected officials don't have to be in a position where they are running against grassroots activists. So basically, she made no qualms, no doubts whatsoever about superdelegates are there so the establishment can have their pick. That's why they're there. She came right out and said it in a moment of astonishing honesty. Though I don't think she really meant it to be received in that way, but this is what she said, and we have to take her for her word on that one. So that is what's happened on the Democratic side of this process for the Democratic Party. And then on the Republican side, we've seen something very similar play out with, this was in the last few weeks even, in the Colorado and Wyoming primaries, or can't even call them a primary, in the process of choosing the delegates in Colorado and Wyoming, Ted Cruz came away with 100% of the delegates in each of those states after 0 statewide or public elections were held within that primary. So basically, there's 1 million voters registered Republican in Colorado, and there was no vote. And I don't even know the full details of how the process went down, but basically there was a whole bunch of convoluted, complex mini caucuses and then maybe some statewide convention or who knows what, but it came down to the insiders picked delegates that they wanted. So you had, 1 million people just didn't get a chance to vote. So those are the two lessons that we've been seeing from of really what democracy means in this. So basically this leads me to another excellent quote from Mr. George Carlin. It's a big club and you ain't in it. We ain't in it. So that's pretty much what a majority rule based system, as bad of an idea as I think majority rule is for organizing hundreds of millions of people, can we please stop pretending that is how our system runs? The government is not us. How many more cycles do we have to go through elections where it is very, very clearly a rigged system before we stop calling the government us?
Well, we should have already known this. I mean, the electoral college system has been around for a long time, and those delegates, they can really vote for whoever they want. That usually they vote for whoever the popular vote went to, but sometimes someone can win the popular vote, but because of the strange electoral college system, the other candidate wins.
Well, that's
right?
true.
So it's very odd. And in the case of the Democrats and the Republicans, they're these weird organizations because they are private
it's
parties,
a private organization.
right? But they're so tied up into politics. They get funding. All their top members are government officials. It's really weird.
The two major parties, the Democratic and Republican parties, are probably the best examples of crony capitalism in play. This is a private organization that is intimately hooked into the government. That's what the two major political parties are. So that leads me to another quote. You know how I love quotes,
Oh,
but I'm
indeed,
actually
indeed.
writing them down this time so I don't butcher them.
The brutality.
And this is from Noam Chomsky, and I'm probably mispronouncing part of his name, a guy that I tend to not agree with very much in what he has to say, but I thought this was an excellent quote I came across of his recently. The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow a very lively debate within that spectrum. That is an excellent quote, and that's exactly what our political process is. And that will, we'll talk about the candidates in the next segment, but we'll see that these guys really don't differ all that much. They have their flares, they have their quirks, they have their things that they get hung up on, but when you get right down to it, none of these guys are all that different. And that leads me to my final point, is that I just want to say that I'm of the belief that none of any of the major candidates, or even the minor ones, anybody that's left, none of these guys from any party are going to, none of these guys are going to solve our problems. None of these guys are going to change the course that our country is headed on. And that's basically because there is no such thing as a quick political fix for problems that have been accumulating and been getting, potentially been getting worse for decades, if not centuries. So keep that in mind as you head to the polls on Tuesday.
I'm more positive than Brian is. I don't think things have been getting worse for centuries. But again, these major politicians, they often leave so much to be desired. It's difficult to root for any of them because their records are all over the place. They're inconsistent when they talk about things. They have no worldview you can latch on to. But we'll get more into that in another segment.
That is correct. Thanks for listening, guys. Again, this is a look ahead to what you can expect in our primary on April 26th. Take care.